Jamaica is an island country situated in the Caribbean Sea, consisting of the third largest island of the Greater Antilles. The island, 10,990 square kilometers in area, lies about 145 kilometers south of Cuba and 191 kilometers west of Hispaniola. The island containing the nation-states of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Jamaica is the fourth largest island country in the Caribbean by area, inhabited by the indigenous Arawak and Taíno peoples. The island came under Spanish rule following the arrival of Christopher Columbus in Indiana 1494. Many of the indigenous people died of disease, and the Spanish imported African slaves as laborers. Named Santiago, it remained a possession of Spain until 1655, when England conquered the island and renamed it Jamaica. Under British colonial rule, Jamaica became a leading sugar exporter, with its plantation economy highly dependent on slaves imported from Africa. All slaves were fully emancipated in 1838, and many freedmen chose to have subsistence farms rather than work on plantations. Beginning in the 1840s, the British imported Chinese and Indian indentured labor to work on plantations. The island achieved independence from the United Kingdom on 6 August 1962. With 2.8 million people, Jamaica is the third most populous Anglophone country in the Americas, and the fourth most populous country in the Caribbean. Kingston is the country's capital and largest city, with a population of 937,700. Jamaicans are of predominantly African descent, with significant European, Chinese, Hakka, Indian, and mixed-race minorities. Due to a high rate of emigration for work since the 1960s, Jamaica has a large diaspora around the world, particularly in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Jamaica is a Commonwealth realm, with Queen Elizabeth II as its monarch and head of state. Her appointed representative in the country is the Governor-General of Jamaica, currently Sir Patrick Allen. The head of government and Prime Minister of Jamaica is Andrew Holness. Jamaica is a parliamentary constitutional monarchy with legislative power vested in the bicameral Parliament of Jamaica, consisting of an appointed Senate and a directly elected House of Representatives. Etymology: the indigenous people, the Taíno, called it Zaimaka in Arawakan, meaning the land of wood and water, or the land of springs. Colloquially, Jamaicans refer to the home island as the Rock. Slang names such as Jam Rock, Jam Down, or briefly Ya have derived from this. History. Prehistory. The Arawak and Taíno indigenous people, originating in South America, settled on the island between 4000 and 1000 BC. When Christopher Columbus arrived in 1494, there were more than 200 villages ruled by caciques. The south coast of Jamaica was the most populated, especially around the area now known as Old Harbor. The Taínos still inhabited Jamaica when the English took control of the island in 1655. The Jamaican National Heritage Trust is attempting to locate and document any evidence of the Taíno Arawak. Spanish rule. Christopher Columbus claimed Jamaica for Spain after landing there in 1494. His probable landing point was Dry Harbor, now called Discovery Bay, although there is some debate that it might have been St. Anne's Bay. St. Anne's Bay was named St. Gloria by Columbus as the first sighting of the land. 1.5 kilometers west of St. Anne's Bay is the site of the first Spanish settlement on the island, Sevilla, which was established in 1509 and abandoned around 1524 because it was deemed unhealthy. The capital was moved to Spanish Town, then called St. Iago de la Vega, around 1534. British rule. Spanish Town has the oldest cathedral of the British colonies in the Caribbean. The The Spanish were forcibly evicted by the English at Ocho Rios in St. and, in 1655, the English, led by Sir William Penn and General Robert Venables, took over the last Spanish fort in Jamaica. The name of Montego Bay, the capital of the parish of St. James, was derived from the Spanish name Manticobavia, alluding to the lard-making industry based on processing the numerous boars in the area. The British continued to import African slaves as laborers. In 1660, the population of Jamaica was about 4,500 white and 1,500 black. By the early 1670s, as the British developed sugarcane plantations and imported more slaves, black people formed a majority of the population. The Irish in Jamaica also formed a large part of the island's early population, making up two-thirds of the white population on the island in the late 17th century, twice that of the British population. They were brought in as indentured labourers and soldiers after the conquest of Jamaica by Cromwell's forces in 1655. The majority of Irish were transported by force as political prisoners of war from Ireland as a result of the ongoing wars of the Three Kingdoms at the time. Migration of large numbers Irish to the island continued into the 18th century. Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492 and then forcibly converted to Christianity in Portugal, during a period of persecution by the Inquisition. Some Spanish and Portuguese Jewish refugees went to the Netherlands and England, and from there to Jamaica. Others were part of the Iberian colonization of the New World, after overtly converting to Catholicism, as only Catholics were allowed in the Spanish colonies. By 1660, Jamaica had become a refuge for Jews in the New World, also attracting those who had been expelled from Spain and Portugal. An early group of Jews arrived in 1510, soon after the son of Christopher Columbus settled on the island, primarily working as merchants and traders. The Jewish community was forced to live a clandestine life, calling themselves Portugals. After the British took over rule of Jamaica, the Jews decided the best defense against Spain's regaining control was to encourage making the colony a base for Caribbean pirates. With the pirates installed in Port Royal, the Spanish would be deterred from attacking. The British leaders agreed with the viability of this strategy to forestall outside aggression. When the English captured Jamaica in 1655, the Spanish colonists fled after freeing the slaves. The slaves dispersed into the mountains, joining the Maroons, those who had previously escaped to live with the Taíno native people. During the centuries of slavery, Maroons established free communities in the mountainous interior of Jamaica, where they maintained their freedom and independence for generations. The Jamaican Maroons fought the British during the 18th century. Under treaties of 1738 and 1739, the British agreed to stop trying to round them up in exchange for the leaving the colonial settlements alone, but serving if needed for military actions. Some of the communities were broken up and the British deported Maroons to Nova Scotia and, later, Sierra Leone. The name is still used today by modern Maroon descendants, who have certain rights and autonomy at the community of Accompong. During its first 200 years of British rule, Jamaica became one of the world's leading sugar-exporting, slave-dependent colonies, producing more than 77,000 tons of sugar annually between 1820 and 1824. After the abolition of the international slave trade in 1807, the British began to import Indian and Chinese workers as indentured servants to supplement the labor pool. Most were recruited beginning in the 1840s after slavery was abolished, as many freedmen resisted working on the plantations. Many ethnic Southeast Asian and Chinese descendants continue to reside in Jamaica today. By the beginning of the 19th century, Jamaica's dependence on slave labor and a plantation economy had resulted in black people outnumbering white people by a ratio of almost 20 to 1. Although the UK had outlawed the importation of slaves, some were still smuggled in from Spanish colonies indirectly. While planning the abolition of slavery, the British Parliament passed laws to improve conditions for slaves. They banned the use of whips in the field and flogging of women, informed planters that slaves were to be allowed religious instruction, and required a free day during each week when slaves could sell the produce, prohibiting Sunday markets to enable slaves to attend church. The House of Assembly in Jamaica resented and resisted the new laws. Members claimed that the slaves were content and objected to Parliament's interference in island affairs. Slave owners feared possible revolts if conditions were lightened. Following a series of rebellions on the island and changing attitudes in Great Britain, the British government formally abolished slavery by an 1833 Act beginning in 1834, with full emancipation from chattel slavery declared in 1838. The population in 1834 was 371,070, of whom 15,000 were white, 5,000 free black, 40,000 colored or free people of color, and 311,070 were slaves. In the 19th century, the British established a number of botanical gardens. These included the Castleton Botanical Gardens, developed in 1862 to replace the Bath Botanical Gardens, which was subject to flooding. Bath Botanical Gardens was the site for planting breadfruit, brought to Jamaica from the Pacific by Captain William Bligh. It became a staple in island diets. Other gardens were the Cinchona Plantation, founded in 1868, and the Hope Botanical Gardens, founded in 1874. In 1872, Kingston was designated as the island's capital. In 1945, Sir Horace Hector Hearn became Chief Justice and Keeper of the Records in Jamaica. He headed the Supreme Court, Kingston, between 1945 and 1951. After Kenya achieved independence, its government appointed him as Chief Justice and he moved there. Independence. Jamaica slowly gained increasing independence from the United Kingdom. In 1958, it became a province in the Federation of the West Indies, a federation among the British West Indies. Jamaica attained full independence by leaving the Federation in 1962. Strong economic growth, averaging approximately 6% per annum, marked the first 10 years of independence under conservative Jamaica Labour Party governments. They were led successively by Prime Ministers Alexander Bustamante, Donald Sangster and Hugh Shearer. The growth was fueled by strong private investments in bauxite, alumina, tourism, the manufacturing industry and, to a lesser extent, the agricultural sector. The optimism of the first decade was accompanied by a growing sense of inequality among many Afro-Jamaicans, and a concern that the benefits of growth were not being shared by the urban poor. Combined with the effects of a slowdown in the global economy in 1970, the voters elected the PNP in 1972. They tried to implement more socially equitable policies in education and health, but the economy suffered under their leadership. By 1980, Jamaica's gross national product had declined to some 25% below the 1972 level, due to rising foreign and local debt, accompanied by large fiscal deficits. The government sought International Monetary Fund financing from the United States and others. Economic deterioration continued into the mid-1980s, exacerbated by a number of factors. The first and third largest alumina producers, Albert and Alcoa, closed, and there was a significant reduction in production by the second largest producer, Alcan. Reynolds Jamaica Mines Limited left the Jamaican industry. There was also a decline in tourism, which was important to the economy. Independence, however widely celebrated in Jamaica, has been questioned in the early 21st century. In 2011, a survey showed that approximately 60% of Jamaicans would prefer to become a British territory again, citing has problems years of social and fiscal mismanagement in the country. Government and politics. Jamaica is a parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy, with Queen Elizabeth II serving as the Jamaican monarch. As Elizabeth II is shared as head of state of 15 other countries and resides mostly in the United Kingdom, she is thus often represented as Queen of Jamaica in Jamaica and abroad by the Governor-General of Jamaica. The Governor-General is nominated by the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the entire cabinet and appointed by the monarch. All the members of the cabinet are appointed by the Governor-General on the advice of the Prime Minister. The monarch and the Governor-General serve largely ceremonial roles. Apart from the reserved powers for use in certain constitutional crisis situations, Jamaica's current constitution was drafted in 1962 by a bipartisan joint committee of the Jamaican legislature. It came into force with the Jamaica Independence Act 1962 of the United Kingdom Parliament, which gave Jamaica independence. The Parliament of Jamaica is bicameral, consisting of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Members of the House are directly elected, and a member of the House of Representatives who, in the Governor-General's best judgment, is best able to command the confidence of a majority of the members of that House, is appointed by the Governor-General to be the Prime Minister. Senators are nominated jointly by the Prime Minister and the parliamentary leader of the opposition and then appointed by the Governor-General. Political culture. Jamaica has traditionally had a two-party system, with power often alternating between the People's National Party and Jamaica Labour Party. The party with current administrative and legislative power is the Jamaica Labour Party, with a one-seat parliamentary majority as of 2016. There are also several minor parties who have yet to gain a seat in Parliament. The largest of these is the National Democratic Movement. Administrative divisions. Jamaica is divided into 14 parishes, which are grouped into 3 historic counties that have no administrative relevance. Military. The Jamaica Defence Force is the small but professional military force of Jamaica. The JDF is based on the British military model with similar organization, training, weapons and traditions. Once chosen, officer candidates are sent to one of several British or Canadian basic officer courses depending on the arm of service. Enlisted soldiers are given basic training at Up Park Camp, a JDF training depot, Newcastle, both in St. Andrew. As with the British model, NCOs are given several levels of professional training as they rise up the ranks. Additional military schools are available for specialty training in Canada, the United States and the United Kingdom. The JDF is directly descended from the British Army's West India Regiment formed during the colonial era. The West India Regiment was used extensively by the British Empire in policing the Empire from 1795 to 1926. Other units in the JDF heritage include the early colonial Jamaica Militia, the Kingston Infantry Volunteers of World War I and reorganized into the Jamaican Infantry Volunteers in World War II. The West Indies Regiment was reformed in 1958 as part of the West Indies Federation. After dissolution of the Federation, the JDF was established. The Jamaica Defence Force comprises an infantry regiment and reserve corps, and a wing, a Coast Guard fleet and a a supporting engineering unit. The infantry regiment contains the 1st, 2nd and 3rd battalions. The JDF Air Wing is divided into 3 flight units, a training unit, a air support unit and the JDF Air Wing. The Coast Guard is divided between seagoing crews and support crews who conduct maritime safety and maritime law enforcement as well as defense-related operations. The role of the support battalion is to provide support to boost numbers in combat and issue competency training in order to allow for the readiness of the force. The 1st Engineer Regiment was formed due to an increased demand for military engineers, and the role is to provide engineering services whenever and wherever they are needed. The headquarters JDF contains the JDF Commander, Command Staff as well as Intelligence, Judge Advocate Office, Administrative and Procurement sections. In recent years the JDF has been called on to assist the nation's police, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, in fighting drug smuggling and a rising crime rate which includes one of the highest murder rates in the world. JDF units actively conduct armed patrols with the JCF in high-crime areas and known gang neighborhoods. There has been vocal controversy as well as support of this JDF role. In early 2005, an opposition leader, Edward Seaga, called for the merger of the JDF and JCF. This has not garnered support in either organization or among the majority of citizens. Geography and environment. Jamaica is the 3rd largest island in the Caribbean. It lies between latitudes 17 degrees and 19 degrees north and longitudes 76 degrees and 79 degrees west. Mountains, including the Blue Mountains, dominate the inland. They are surrounded by a narrow coastal plain. Chief towns and cities include the capital Kingston on the south shore, Portmore, Spanish Town, Mandeville, Ocho Rios, Port Antonio, Negril, and Montego Bay on the north shore. Kingston Harbor is the 7th largest natural harbor in the world, which contributed to the city being designated as the capital in 1872. Tourist attractions include Dunn's River Falls in St. Anne, Wyas Falls in St. Elizabeth, the Blue Lagoon in Portland, believed to be the crater of an extinct volcano. Port Royal was the site of a major earthquake in 1692 that helped form the island's Palisados. The climate in Jamaica is tropical, with hot and humid weather, although higher inland regions are more temperate. Some regions on the south coast, such as the Liguania Plain and the Pedro Plains, are relatively dry rain shadow areas. Jamaica lies in the hurricane belt of the Atlantic Ocean, and because of this, the island sometimes suffers significant storm damage. Hurricanes Charlie and Gilbert hit Jamaica directly in 1951 and 1988, respectively, causing major damage and many deaths. In the 2000s, Hurricanes Ivan, Dean, and Gustav also brought severe weather to the island. Among the variety of terrestrial, aquatic and marine ecosystems are dry and wet limestone forests, rainforest, riparian woodland, wetlands, caves, rivers, seagrass beds and coral reefs. The authorities have recognized the tremendous significance and potential of the environment and have designated some of the more fertile areas as protected. Among the island's protected areas of the Cockpit Country, Hershey Hills, and Litchfield Forest Reserves. In 1992, Jamaica's first marine park, covering nearly 15 square kilometers, was established in Montego Bay. Portland Bight Protected Area was designated in 1999. The following year, Blue and John Crow Mountains National Park was created on roughly 300 square miles of native wilderness, which supports thousands of tree and fern species and rare animals. Flora and fauna. Jamaica's climate is tropical, supporting diverse ecosystems with a wealth of plants and animals. Jamaica's plant life has changed considerably over the centuries. When the Spanish arrived in 1494, except for small agricultural clearings, the country was deeply forested. The European settlers cut down the great timber trees for building and ships' supplies, and cleared the plains, savannas, and mountain slopes for intense agricultural cultivation. Many new plants were introduced, including sugarcane, bananas, and citrus trees. Areas of heavy rainfall contain stands of bamboo, ferns, ebony, mahogany, and rosewood. Cactus and similar dry area plants are found along the south and southwest coastal area. Parts of the west and southwest consist of large grasslands, with scattered stands of trees. The Jamaican animal life, typical of the Caribbean, includes highly diversified wildlife with many endemic species found nowhere else on Earth. As with other oceanic islands, land mammals are mostly bats. The only non-bat native mammal extant in Jamaica is the Jamaican hutia, locally known as the coney. Introduced mammals such as wild boar and the small Asian mongoose are also common. Jamaica is also home to about 50 species of reptiles, the largest of which is the American crocodile. However, it is only present within the Black River and a few other areas. Lizards such as anoles, iguanas and snakes such as races and the Jamaican boa are common in areas such as the Cockpit country. None of Jamaica's 8 species of native snakes is venomous. One species of freshwater turtle is native to Jamaica, the Jamaican slider. It is found only on Jamaica, Cat Island, and a few other islands in the Bahamas. In addition, many types of frogs are common on the island, especially tree frogs. Birds are abundant, and make up the bulk of the endemic and native vertebrate species. Beautiful and exotic birds, such as the Jamaican toady and the doctor bird, can be found among a large number of others. Jamaican waters contain considerable resources of fresh and saltwater fish. The chief varieties of saltwater fish are kingfish, jack mackerel, whiting, bonito, and tuna. Fish that occasionally enter freshwater and estuarine environments include snook, jewfish, mangrove snapper, and mullets. Fish that spend the majority of their lives in Jamaica's fresh waters include many species of live berries, killifish, freshwater gobies, the mountain mullet, and the American eel. Tilapia have been introduced from Africa for aquaculture, and are very common. Insects and other invertebrates are abundant, including the world's largest centipede, the Amazonian giant centipede, and the Homerus swallowtail, the Western Hemisphere's largest butterfly.